Okay, so
Okay.
7:35 meeting is now in or called to order, and we have a quorum with Marty, Elizabeth, and Larry, and Arthur. Thank you for being the Zoom master as well as our liaison. This meeting is being recorded and is also being tracked on AI, so it should be easier to do the minutes. Let's see how the AI works. This is our first time with that. Um, Welcome, everyone, and we're going to get started. First, I'd like to thank again on the record all the residents who provided public comments about the election regulations at our last committee meeting and at the council meeting, and especially to the 5 residents who wrote the village charter back in 1985 and really helped to clarify the election process and requirements this year by documenting the legislative intent. I thought that their letter was very clear and powerful and very helpful. Um, First item is administrative approval of minutes. And again, Elizabeth, thank you so much for the chore of doing the minutes. It is a big job and you do it beautifully.
Okay.
Does anyone have any changes or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, may we have a motion to,
I make a motion.
all right. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Yes, aye.
Okay, and me, that makes it unanimous. And Elizabeth, thank you for doing minutes for this meeting as
Yes.
well.
You're welcome.
The only other administrative item I have is to just record for the record that the 3 election committee members who said that they would take the ethics committee training, in fact, did so back on January 22nd. All 3 of us showed
Okay.
up. Naomi could not do that because she was out of town, but the other 3 of us all did it. And unless anyone has any other administrative items, let's move to content.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Nothing else? Okay. Review of our work schedule. We are now well into the middle of the second paragraph there about preparing and posting election notices. And I'm going to go over the schedule tonight a little lower in the agenda of what comes next for our thing. And then, of course, April is when we send the verified voter roll to the contractor. The April 7th is the due date for that. And that has not changed. That sort of work schedule is standard.
So, Marty,
Yes, sir.
so how many, you're comparing how many databases? 3?
We have 3 databases, right? So I'm going to action item number 1, next steps in the voter roll verification process. We have 3 databases. We start with last year's voter roll, the 2024 voter roll, which was very accurate because remember we had Julian Lampier as a contractor really do an outside audit, and that voter roll was squeaky clean. I think there were 5 residents who's changed, who moved away or died between April 7th, when we gave that voter roll to the contractor, and the May election date, when we finalized the actual final voter roll on May 7th last year. That's a very clean voter roll, 99% plus. And that's a great basis to go forward. So,
Okay.
so we start with, go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the scope of the work there. So were they all in Excel or?
Yes, it's an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, and then we have to go through that and
update
what do
it.
you think is non-voters, voters that we've lost? What do you think would be the number likely?
Oh, okay. My beloved spouse Bill and I have been going through the second spreadsheet we use is the one from Michael. It's not the directory, it's the official village office list, which is more complete than the directory.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill and I have run an Excel spreadsheet comparison of that. And we have had quite a few move-ins and move-outs. There are 62 people on the village list, Michael's current village list, who were not on the 2024 voter roll. And those seem to be people who moved in. And, we have a corresponding number of people who are
Down.
who left, right, who moved out, right, or died. And so then we ran the comparison the other way.
A real move out, yeah.
Yeah. And, we have basically 638 voters total, right? I sort of rounded off at 640. So that's like 10% of our voters, right,
Okay.
have changed.
So the next steps are going to be what?
All right. So then we looked and ran the comparison on the Excel spreadsheets of who was on the voter roll last year, who is not on the current village list, We're basically running it the other way. And that includes a lot of people who are kids, like adult children, where our voter roll has, like, for example, 4 people, Jimmy Joyce and his wife and 2 sons are 4 people who are on the voter roll here on Chestnut Street, but the village list only has the 2. So there are a lot of cases where the village list is incomplete. One of the challenges of this whole project is that you're comparing incomplete lists, right? The most complete one we have is the 2024 voter roll, but that's now got to be updated. The village list of residents is supposed to be complete, but does not, in fact, have everybody on it who's on the voter roll. And the third list that we go to, once we do this comparison, and Larry, by Wednesday, I will have all of this spread out on the spreadsheets and marked with colors so you can see exactly who's in and who's out. And what we essentially need to do as a committee this week on the voter roll verification is send letters to anybody who has not died that we don't actually have an obituary for.
Is it email and mail?
We send out generic email notices, which we've done repeatedly now, to all the residents, right, on Constant Contact and in the newsletter saying, get in touch if there's any changes.
Right.
So far, nobody has gotten in touch to let us know about changes. So then what we do is we have to, before we remove somebody from the voter roll, the regulations require, and this is a good practice, that they get a letter in writing. This comports with the state and county regs.
But I'm asking you, are we doing that by both email and postal mail?
Yes. Where we have an email address, we can notify them by email. Where we have a mailing address, which we have for all 62, we send them the letter because they are entitled to not be removed as a qualified voter without getting a written letter.
Okay, well, let me back up.
Marty.
Yeah, go ahead, Elizabeth, and then we'll come back, Larry.
Okay. When I was looking at your draft letter that you're sending out to verify those who are, one, still a resident of Martin's Additions, but there's some question about it, if they are still a resident. All right. And the second case was if you were no longer a VMA resident, but isn't there a third case, which is if you are a new resident?
Yeah.
All right. All right. And actually there's a fourth case, which is if you're a young adult who's just turned 18.
Right, to sign up new people.
Right.
And that was
Shouldn't those also be in this same communication draft that you sent around?
It's actually a different, yes, it should be. And it has been in our public announcements on the newsletter and the weekly wrap-ups. But this is one of the questions I have for you guys tonight, is should we send a letter to every household saying, if you have a new voter or you are a new resident, please fill out the attached form to register to vote in Martin's Additions. And that is an additional step that we did not do last year. I think it makes sense. All we did last year was the general announcement saying, if you're a new resident or you just turned 18 or you'll turn 18 by May 6th, get in touch. And a number of people did. There's another way to do that rather than do another mailing, which is a mailing is a burden on the staff. And that is to actually do a flyer that goes out via the street captains that says, calling all new residents and new voters, please contact the election committee to sign up on the voter roll. Now, this is complicated. Let me give you the rest of the answer. Yeah. Of those new voters, some of them are going to be registered to vote in Montgomery County. And under the county and state law, if someone moves into Martin's Additions and they update their registration on the county list, they automatically then become registered in VMA. So that's why we have the third Excel spreadsheet, Larry, to go back to your data sources. The third Excel spreadsheet is the current list from the county, from the state and county registration of voters. And I just got that on Friday from our buddy Boris and Sandy at the County Board of Elections. So we have that, and we have not done that list yet. We've looked at the list of the letters of people who might be removed from the voter roll because they have to get the printed letters this week in order to have time to respond. Adding new voters is something we can do right up through May 6th.
When?
Till May 6th.
No,
we can add new voters up till May 6th, but we have to notify people who might be removed from the voter roll in March.
March when?
Well, like March 7th, in order to get a response from them by March 28th, so that we can finalize a verified voter roll by April 7th.
Okay, okay, so that's 4 days.
No, from March 7th to March 28th is
No,
3 weeks.
aren't you saying you need to send a letter out by the 7th?
We need to send a letter out this week.
By
And
the
that's
7th.
pretty easy to do. If we approve the letter or edit it tonight, and give Michael the list of names of people it goes to, he's got the addresses. He said it's not a problem. I've scheduled it for him that we would have the letter ready to go out Friday afternoon, and I'm willing to pop by and take it to the post office.
I see.
I can help stuff envelopes too.
So I'm still confused.
Okay.
I thought you said we talked about 12 to 20 new people potentially, and then you talked about 64 people.
62. Yeah, we have more new people than I thought when I first skimmed the list.
Hold on. The number 62, what is that?
That is the number of people on the village list, the current village residents list, who were not on the 2024 voter roll. So these are new residents.
And what about the people who have left? Is that the
People
12
who are
20?
the people who are left, who have left or died, are the ones who need to get the letter this week in order to have time to respond in
But
March.
is that the 12 or 20 that you're estimating?
No, there's more than that. We have 90 people on the old voter roll who are not on the village list, and some of them. There's two categories of those people who are not on the village list. Some of them are in fact valid voters. Like I said, there are 4 people who could vote at Jimmy Joyce's house, not just 2. The village list is not complete. Some of them are people who have moved away, and so they're no longer on the village resident list. So basically, the people that we might remove are the ones we need to get letters out to this week. And I will have by Wednesday a complete list of those names. And Michael says he can, if I give him the list or we give him the list by Wednesday of people who get the letters that say, hi, are you still a resident? If so, get in touch or you might be removed. Those letters are the ones that need to go out this week. Elizabeth, to go to your question, and this is why we're talking about it. People who are new, we can add after March. All right, we can add new people right up till May 6th. So the time sensitive piece of this is the people who might be removed as qualified voters, the ones we think have moved away.
Well, so here's what I'm concerned about. Number one, the method of communication. So I think if we send out too many communications about the election, people are going to potentially are more likely to ignore some of those communications. So this idea that Elizabeth brought up, about whether it's old or new, there's a question at your address, is maybe something we should think about. The other thing is you had mentioned using block captains, flyers, and
Right.
I'm sorry, but that is based on what occurred. What was the last thing that we were trying to get done that the block captains were?
It was the announcement about the candles just before Christmas, and not all the block captains came through.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That method is not reliable, and because of that, I don't think we should be using it for any election communication.
I generally agree with you, Larry. I think that it's a chore for people, and if people don't do it, we have no way to make them do it. I wouldn't want to be, doing compulsory work for block captains. It's not okay. That's not what they signed up for. I think we need to have official communications, which is why the letters are what the County Board of Election recommends. And certainly we can send email announcements to people, but again, people ignore their email announcements. So
yes, but I'm trying to suggest that the email and the postal mail communication be almost identical.
yeah, they should be. That's true.
Okay, and go out at pretty much the same time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Elizabeth, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with, I'd rather see one communication that covers all bases, all, categories
Yeah.
of potential voters, rather than, because you just said that the new people or the young ones turning 18 have until
May
May
6th.
6th. And you've got some reference to that on this draft letter here that is supposed to go out, except it doesn't really say, it just says you qualify as a VMA voter if, you live here, this is your primary address, and B, you will be 18 or older by May 6th.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't say that you
What
have
to
to
do.
return anything. Exactly. So why can't
Right.
we also add that to this same letter so you cover all the bases
I
in
think
one
that's a great idea.
communication?
I think that's a great idea. The only thing is that this letter is not going out to all, 330 village households. This letter would only go to the people that we think are being possibly removed. So if
Well, then
somebody's moved away,
why put that in there then? I
well,
mean, then what's the purpose of that paragraph being there?
is to let the person know what the qualifications are, because somebody may have moved away and not be on Michael's resident list anymore, but might still legally be a resident because of the council's charter definition of residence. For example, Tiffany Cisna and her husband Francis were in Mexico for 2 years, and they rented out their house. And they insisted, and we agreed last year, that they are still legally residents because they are not voting anywhere else, and they're over 18. It's still their primary address and sole residence for U.S. voting purposes. So somebody could have moved away and not be on Michael's list, but still legally be qualified to vote. Arthur, this is where that new definition of residence that you guys did a year and a half ago really comes into play, because it's a little tricky to implement it. We need to know if that person moved away and is not coming back, or moved away temporarily, like Tiffany Cisna and her husband did, and does plan to come back. And the decision as to whether or not they still think of themselves as a resident and plan to come back, that's a subjective thing in their head. We're not mind readers. So the only way that we can know if somebody who's actually physically moved out of the village and maybe rented out their house, like Tiffany Cisna did, still thinks that they're a resident and plans to come back and so would be entitled to get a ballot, is if they tell us, right? We have to ask them. So this is why this is there. This is, you still qualify if it's Martin's Additions is still your primary address and sole voting residence. Tiffany's sister was in Mexico City, but she still voted. So did her husband. And we have a provision in the regulations that covers this, that says if you want your ballot sent to a different address, if you're not going to be here in April, give us the new address and we'll send it to your other address, as long as you're still legally a resident per the definition in the charter. Which is why election stuff gets complicated, because, you want to be fair and be inclusive, and the council changed the charter definition to do that. And so now we have somewhat more of a workload burden here for the committee. So yeah,
are you saying that this letter is going to go to a person at an address?
Yes, this letter goes to the people that we think no longer live here, that we think are no longer residents because they're not on Michael's resident list.
Okay.
Some of them still could be legally residents, like Tiffany Cisna in Mexico City. Okay. In which case they need to get back of us and tell us that, we can send the ballot.
Hold on, wait. That's not my question.
Okay.
My question is the address on the thing. So we send it to an address, a person at the address.
Right.
And the new person is annoyed because they've gotten all kinds of spam mailing crap for the old person, the other previous person. And so they just throw it away.
That's a problem.
Okay. Is it all right to have this say, is there a privacy issue if it says Benny Hill or present occupant?
Yeah, you can't send election stuff to a present occupant. You could only send it to a voter. And this letter has to go to a specific voter.
Can we print on the envelope something that says if this person is not at this address, could you please call the village office at
Well,
XYZ?
yeah, what we've been putting in our notices, our
No, they're
election.
not going to open the notice. It's
No,
going
no, I'm
to,
saying the language we've been putting in the notices is if you get election mail addressed to somebody who no longer lives at your address, to please mark the envelope, quote, not at this address, return to sender. We put that in several different notices now that have gone out on Constant Contact and in the newsletter article. And that's what gets printed on this envelope for this.
well,
If the
I
person,
understand. And I, again, think it's not enough because number one, I know at this, Marge will not, she takes everything to the post office because our mailbox, our postal mailbox on the corner has been broken into so many times
true.
that it's often wrapped with yellow tape and warned to be unreliable. So when you say, return to sender, etc., and I've actually gotten mails for people all the way down Bradley in that area. Okay, and I leave it out for the mailman, and then I called the people to see if they ever got that mail. They didn't.
Oh, good for you. Good for you for following up on that. I mean, I give it to the mailman when
Yeah,
I have.
but let me tell you, it doesn't always get where it's supposed to go.
Right,
So
right.
my point to you is, what else could we, is there some way we can print to ask them to call the village office and leave a brief message or something?
Or to email the election committee. Better to not have it. I mean, we could have them call the village office. We could have them call the election committee.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying that return to sender stuff doesn't work so good.
Yeah. Now, last year, people are starting to get the idea.
Okay.
We had 5 envelopes that came back, marked, the way we said it, not at this address, return to sender, which is how we cleaned up the final voter roll in May last year. And that was very helpful. People are starting to get the idea that this is important to do. And the envelope that this goes out in, that this letter goes out in to the 62 people, will say, important voter verification. If the person is addressed to, please give it to your mailman to return to sender.
Yeah, and by the way, just to make it clear, I'm not suggesting that we don't use that, but I'm asking.
But that's not enough. Yeah.
Okay.
I think one thing that'll help this year, we have a lot more email addresses now than we used to on Michael's office list. And one of the things we can do, and I think we should, but it's up to you guys, is in addition to sending this letter to the 62 people who appear on Michael's list to no longer be residents and therefore no longer voters, that we email as many of them as we have email addresses for. And I'm willing to call the ones that we have phone numbers for, because probably even if they move, maybe their phone didn't change. And so when I used to do this back in the old days, I would literally call or email everyone that there was any question about.
Right.
And it wasn't that big a chore because we didn't have as much turnover back then. I guess we were just lucky those years. But now we really have a systematic way to do this. We actually have a procedure, Appendix A in the regulations, and it's standard. I mean, I think Ron probably wrote it. It came from the state and county. And I've checked it with the county board of elections, and they say, yeah, it's right, that what we have written down is the way to do it. And they also, of course, have the same problem, much more than we do. They got like 40,000 or 400,000 voters. We only have 640. But they are very frustrated that people do not return election mail, and that is one of their main ways of verifying their county voter roll, is people send a letter back saying, Joe Smith is no longer at this address.
I can tell you the county, when you're, let's say you want to get your, you don't want to go to a polling station, you want to do it by email.
By mail, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So they actually, your email is an official notification.
Yes. And I think that we can do that here. And I think this year what we should do is send both the email notification and the paper letter. And let's see where we get a response from. And for the committee, the bottom line for us is if somebody does not reply by March 28th, which is the latest date we can give them, and still make our April 7th deadline to get the verified list to the contractor, If we don't get a response by March 28th, then we as a committee vote to remove that person from the qualified VMA voter list.
Okay.
That's the way it works. And it's spelled out in the regs.
So, all right. So let's say we do that, and then the person goes to vote, and they're notified that their vote was rejected. We have a process in place if they contact us to activate their vote.
If they're not on the verified list on April 7th, when we vote to approve the verified list and send it in, they won't get a ballot. If somebody
what I mean is we decide that they're no longer here because they haven't responded by the 20th. And so therefore they're not eligible.
Right.
We think, okay. And then they contact us and say, what the hell, what's going on here? You know, I never got this notice. I don't know what you're talking about. What do we do in that situation?
What I would do is say that we handle it the way we would handle anybody else, which is we ask them to give us some documentation that they're still a resident. You know, some current
process them. We would accept their vote.
We can process them right up till May 6th. We can add new voters. So if somebody was mistakenly removed from the voter roll, they weren't on the list that we sent to the contractor on April 7th, and they call us, the ballots come out like end of April. So maybe it's April 28th, right? People are receiving their ballots.
Right.
And Joe Smith calls up and says, how come I didn't get a ballot? And we say, well, we sent you the letter back in the beginning of March and you didn't.
Yeah. But we would process him if possible.
If possible, right up to May 6th. We can add voters up till May 6th. So we wouldn't exclude anybody. We err on the side of inclusivity, if that's the word I want.
All right. Thank you.
That's a really important point. I'm really glad we're talking this through because it is complicated. And it's a matter of principle to do it right. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yeah, I have on this draft letter because about the whether they're an eligible resident or not. On the back side, it has
the form to fill out.
If a new voter, what documentation did the person provide to confirm their name, age, and address in VMA? So where does it say in the letter that you have to provide documentation to confirm all of that? It doesn't say it.
And I think, your point, Elizabeth, that we should cover new voters in this letter is a good one. Okay. Although this letter was only going to go to the 62 people who are probably going to be removed.
Right.
But on the other hand, it's a standard form to cover both situations.
And will we have the, let's say the 18-year-olds that are turning 18 in the next few months. Do we know who those people are?
Generally not, unless we happen to know them personally. One of the nice things about the voter roll back in the day, and I'm being nostalgic here, is that we had 5 people on the committee, and between us, we were scattered enough across the village that we actually knew most of the people on the residence list. And so we knew that, Patrick James was going to turn 18 in whenever, and would be eligible. We could call him up and say, Patrick, you want to register to vote? And I actually did that with a number of people last year where I knew that they had teenagers who were turning 18, and we got some new voters, which is great. One of the things we can do in the April newsletter, because more people seem to read the newsletter than read the weekly wrap-ups, so the newsletter articles are important, is to really do like a special, bold headlines, new voters, teenagers, cast your first vote in Martin's Editions. We want you here. Sign up and vote. And we actually did language like that last year and got a handful, not 50, but a handful, maybe 20 young voters that did sign up who were turned 18 and were pretty pleased to be especially invited. We can also do a standalone note in April saying, if you're going to be 18 by May 6th, and you're a new voter, we want you. So there's not just the newsletter article as a communications tool, but also a standalone note as new voters. And I think it's probably a good idea to do that as well. And again, you have to be, Larry's point about don't overwhelm people with too much election stuff or they ignore it all. That's true. But it's really an important point to say, we want new voters in here. And the only way we can legally automatically add a new voter is if they're on the county list. And odds are that they're not going to be, because the county list is not in very good shape still, despite all the county efforts. So we want to get people up on our VMA voter roll. We've said many times, in fact, I think in almost every article we've done, we want every eligible resident to be able to vote. And that is the principle involved here. And
So what do you do then with in that situation? You said if that 18-year-old isn't already prior registered with the county, we can't put them on our roll? Is that what you just said?
no, we can add them. They just need to get in touch with us. And then
But you just said something about if they're not on the county roll.
No, she said it wouldn't be automatic.
right. It's only automatic. If that 18-year-old on his 18th birthday signs up and registered to vote with the county, they would show up on the county list. That'd be great.
Oh, I see.
And then we can add them. If they're not on the county list, and odds are they won't be, that's not one of even for
right.
adults when they move in. They don't necessarily change their voter roll registration right away. So the county list is something we need to check legally and ethically, but it's not very helpful in terms of getting new voters on the list. And then that goes back to another option, which is not only should we put in the April newsletter the thing about, new residents and teenagers sign up now, now's the time for the VMA voter roll, but we should also consider, and this is a burden on the staff, a letter that goes to all 330 households that says, if you have a new voter in your household, sign them up now. We want every eligible voter to be able to vote. So that's an option that we have. We could send out a second letter that went to every household for the new voters, because this letter that we have that has the form attached, the form covers, all the different possibilities, but the letter itself is only going to the 62 people who it looks like could be removed. This letter, the current letter.
So
okay. So can we just to summarize on what needs to be on this current letter to the 62, if that's who it's going to? Is there stuff on there that doesn't need to be on there? In other words,
I don't think so. What do you guys think?
Well, are we adding new stuff?
Well, the question was whether we should put something, add a paragraph in here, or add a line in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph that says new voters, where after it says you don't have to be a U.S. citizen or registered voter in Montgomery County, we could add a sentence there that Elizabeth suggested earlier. If you are a new resident or are a teenager who will be 18 by May 6th, please contact the election committee so we can put you on the voter roll. We could have this letter do this, but it will miss most of the people, because most of the people getting this letter are moving out, not in.
Right. That's just, this is being sent to a list you already know about of 62 people.
Right.
So that would not be the most ideal way to reach those that fall in the other category, that moved in or that are getting,
turning 18.
Having a birthday.
No,
yeah.
Right.
When I'm looking at this letter, the first thing is, I don't understand why I'm getting the letter. So if it were me, I would take in the second paragraph, the second sentence, if you are still a resident of Martin's Additions, please get in touch. And I would make that bold and underlined.
And start with that rather than...
No, I didn't say start with it. I said, it says, hey, this is the problem. We're not sure you're a resident.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So, why not start with it?
Well, if you want. Yeah, that's fine. You could start.
Or at least
we may not need the first sentence, the first paragraph.
The first sentence is okay because it says why that you're verifying it. But then the first sentence of the second paragraph, I think is redundant. I don't think.
Okay, I agree.
Okay.
And then you go right into the problem, what to do if you are still a resident.
I just pulled up the draft. I bolded it so it says the first sentence is you are receiving this letter because ... And it says in bold, if you are still a resident of Martin's Additions, please get in touch.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I put we want every eligible resident to be able to vote.
All right, great. So
at the end of that paragraph.
Elizabeth and I agree it's your fault, Marty. So that's fantastic.
Oh, totally. Right. No question. No question. I've just fixed it. I think this is why you guys are such good editors, because you really are good. This is helpful. And bolding that is good. So now there are two things bolded in the letter. The first says, if you are still a resident, please get in touch. And then says how. And then down two
If
paragraphs
you are
below
no
that.
longer.
Yeah, no, I didn't. It says, please reply by Friday, March 28th. Those are the two key facts that people need to pull off of this letter. Get in touch and get in touch by Friday, March 28th. If you don't reply, you might be removed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay, so can we look at
And then the rest? The next one
And the next one is you qualify as a voter
is,
if
okay,
A and B.
is that necessary in this communication?
Yes, because they need to know what the definition of a legal resident is to know if they still qualify. Like Tiffany Cisna, not actually living here, not on the resident list from the
Right.
village office, but still legally a resident and a voter.
All right.
Hmm.
So that definition needs to stay in there.
Okay.
Okay, so what about the Elizabeth? Is there anything else?
Well, it's still the stuff on the back of the form, or the next page,
Mm-hmm.
where it says for election committee use, if a new voter, what documentation does the person provide? I mean, you haven't said anywhere else that anybody has to provide any documentation. So I'm just saying
No.
that
This is
should
the
either go out or add that instruction above if that's a requirement to get on the list.
Right. The reason that's there is because the council, at Ron Bolt's suggestion, had to approve this form. It was approved in February 2024. And the form, the election committee last year decided to be efficient and put both adding and deleting voters on one form so that there weren't two different pieces of paper, just so we only have one form to file. So the bottom half of it is for the new people, and the top half of it is for two things, really. One is people who no longer are here, or people who no longer live here, like Tiffany Cisna, but still want to vote and need to give us a different mailing address to send their ballot to because they're not physically residing in the village, but they're still legal residents. So the first part is what's germane to the letter on the front. And I guess we could, as an election committee, I mean, it's our management decision, take off the second bottom half about the new voters so as not to confuse people. But this is the form that the council approved, so which is why you're seeing it in the format that it is now.
Well, but why would you take it off? I don't understand.
Because you're not asking anybody in the body of the letter
Right.
to provide documentation or proof that they're.
So,
Are you? Or if
No.
that's required, then
okay, but
say it up there in the
it's a
front. in the first-
declaration of eligibility to vote. Okay, I hereby affirm. Okay, then there's a space all the way down. The last line to fill out: print mailing address for your ballot. And then there's a space, and then it says for election committee use. And that space is where we can provide instructions. I mean, example. I've used my driver's license on government registrations and charters and professional licenses where I scan in my driver's license and attach it to the form.
Right.
And it's accepted. So why
Right.
isn't there a little instruction then in that blank space that says, it gives them the idea, please provide in other words, make it easy. They can do this by email. It's not like they have to travel somewhere or we have to travel somewhere. Okay.
That's exactly right, Larry. That in fact is what I have done in the past when I've been on the committee and needed to add a voter. I've been happy to have somebody, scan and send me their driver's license. Or in one case, it was a student ID we accepted. Another case, it was a bank statement addressed to them at their VMA address to prove that they actually lived here. The committee has discretion about what we will accept as proof of residence. As long as it's some kind of official legal something, we will generally accept it because we are inclusive. And I've done that. But it doesn't say that here because this particular form would have a different cover letter if it were sent to all the residents, all 330 households, and said, if you have a new voter, if you are a new voter, please fill out the form on the back. That's a different letter. This letter that we're dealing with this week is about if you may be removed because you're no longer a resident.
Okay.
So
Right, and those are people that had already confirmed their, they'd already confirmed their residence there. So whatever documentation was necessary, it's a moot point for them. In
right,
this case,
because they're on the voter roll from last year because they've
Exactly.
already demonstrated that they are
Yeah.
residents.
Mhm.
So we don't
I
need
have a
them to
question for you.
reconfirm it.
I'm totally confused.
Well, let's talk it through. That's why we put it on the agenda, to really make sure we're all clear.
The front of the letter says what it says, which is not apparently what the back of the letter says.
Right.
So
The
what
form
I
on the
see-
back of the letter covers two different issues, or two different circumstances. The front of the letter is just people who might be removed.
Okay. And someone who got the letter, why would they use the back?
Well, we hope they will simply email the committee, because then we can work out whatever,
Why? What's their purpose?
if they don't have email or they don't want to use
No.
email.
Marty, pretend I'm absolutely stupid here. Okay?
I've never thought that for a moment.
I get this letter, okay?
Mhm.
And I've read the letter, and now I need you to explicitly tell me why I would fill out this declaration of eligibility. Under what circumstance?
You would fill it out. You would need to fill it out if you were temporarily residing elsewhere, but you still considered Martin's Additions your primary residence, so you're still a qualified voter under the new definition from the council. And so you're filing this form so that you can get a ballot this year, because otherwise, if you're not living here and you don't respond to this cover letter, we think you've moved away and you're now voting in Kentucky.
Okay.
And we don't send you a
why?
ballot. If you want a ballot, you have to check the little second box that says, I'm temporarily residing in Kentucky, but I'm still voting in Martin's Additions. I'm still a resident of Martin's Additions. Send me a ballot. And then it has, you see the bottom line in the first half, print the mailing address we should send your ballot to if you're not going to be at your VMA address in April.
And if that's the case, I'm still, as a member of the election committee, I need a verifying document.
Not if they're already on the voter roll. Everybody, the 62 people getting this letter, this March letter, are already on the voter roll. They're already confirmed.
Yeah, this was my original point, was that the bottom half of the back page for election committee use is not applicable to the rest of the letter. And so it could cause confusion. I mean, it doesn't apply. So are we at liberty to remove it, or if this has been voted on by the council as a standard form, and then we just live with it and forget about that it's there, even though it's not really going to be, it doesn't apply to these 62 people who are going to receive the letter. So can we just make a decision on that?
Yep.
Because I think we're spending too much time on this.
Yes, indeed. I am fine with deleting it and only using the first half of the form to go with this letter to the people who may be removed, because the bottom half of the form is not applicable to them, as you just said. I am fine with that.
Okay.
Do we have a motion to only use the top half of the approved form?
The affirmation part, but not the election committee use. Yeah.
Right.
I so move.
Larry?
I'm not going to second it. You, Marty, you'll have to second it. I'm not going to vote for it.
Well, we can't do anything unless we have 3 votes, because we need a majority.
Well, say it one more time, Larry, what your concern is that's not clear.
I think that the bottom the commentary makes it very obvious that the top part of the form, needs a form of verification. So
But Marty just said that these people are already on the voter list. So they've already shown verification at some time in the past, but it seems to have lapsed.
Is
so
that true? This is only going to people on the voter list?
Yes, Larry, that's correct. The letter on the front goes to people who were on the voter roll last year and were confirmed as voters last year, but appear to no longer be residents.
And we have no people where there's a question that they are no longer residents and they weren't on the county voter roll or our voter roll last year. We don't have anybody like that we're mailing.
Yeah, we do have people like that, but this letter isn't going to any of them. This letter is only going to people who may be removed from the voter roll.
Mm-hmm.
And we start with last year's voter roll. We have 62 people who were on last year's voter roll who appear to no longer be residents and need to get this letter before we can legally remove them. So,
okay, fine. I second the motion.
Okay, so we have 2 in favor. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. The decision here, Elizabeth, for the minutes is that for the purposes of this letter, we will use the top half of the approved form.
Okay.
And that we can, in the future, send another announcement or another letter to all 340 households or 330 households that says, if you're a new voter, give us some documentation so we can add you to the voter roll because we want you to be able to vote. And that would get the form.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with this decision. I think you guys did a good job on this. So I'm marking here on my notes. Use only the top applicable half of the form. Okay? Everybody good on that? Clear?
Yeah, or to be even more specific, to remove the section that begins for election committee use.
Which is not relevant for this letter.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
Because
You
the
could
way
have
it comes out on people's printers may top half and bottom half may look different. So
Right. No, you know, your amendment is clearer. I
Okay.
amend the motion and accept it as stated by Elizabeth.
Okay,
That's a
all
good
right.
clarification. Okay. So we've now got the letter that needs to go out this week. And by Wednesday, I will have the list of the 62 names ready to go. And Larry, you had said that you'd be available Wednesday afternoon to go over that list with me. Elizabeth, do you want to be in on that, or you don't need to? It only needs 2 of
No.
us to.
No, that's okay. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking, let's use our time efficiently. Larry, thank you for helping with the actual list.
Elizabeth, you really screwed up. I was going to do scallops and broccoli. Okay.
Well, depending on what kind of spices you put in there, I may be tempted.
Have food will come.
Lots of garlic and turmeric and hot sauce.
Sounds great to me.
All right.
Okay, guys, are we set on the voter roll verification process for what we need to do in our next steps? Anything other questions about that? Okay, again, the time-sensitive nature of this is simply that we need to give people time to respond to a written notification before we remove them. And that's what this step is.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on. Process for candidate filings. Candidate filings are due on Saturday, the 22nd of March, which is basically 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. And the mailing of the election info packet goes out within 2 weeks of that candidate filing date. And I talked to Michael about that. He knows the schedule. Let's do the process for the candidate filings. Presuming that we do get some candidates to file. And Arthur was mentioning earlier that at the luncheon, the brunch at La Firme, that a number of people told him they were really happy and thinking about running because we had the flyers at the brunch. So that was a great decision, team, to have those. Yeah. And I had a number, as I was handing them out and putting our little flyer on each table, a number of people told me that they would consider it. So we might actually get some candidates, and I sure hope we do. The candidate filings will come in at 6 p.m. on the 22nd, which is a Saturday. And we will need to have an administrative meeting of the election committee. It doesn't need to be a public meeting because this is administrative, to just review those. We could do that on Saturday night or Sunday. And we should do it sooner rather than later because they have till the 23rd, which is Sunday, to correct any mistakes. We had one year when one candidate did not complete the COI form, did some of it, but forgot to sign it and didn't fill it all out. So we got back to him right away and said, hey, you need to finish doing your form before we can accept you as a candidate. The process of accepting the filings is really simple. Is the person on the voter roll? Are they a voter in VMA? They have to be a voter in VMA in order to run. If it's somebody we've never heard of and they're not on the voter roll, we need to call them and immediately find out if they want to register to vote so that they can run. I mean, it could be you had somebody who's brand new to the village who files as a candidate and is not on any of our lists. That's possible. In which case, our job on Saturday night or Sunday morning is to call them and find them and say, you know, you can't run until you become a resident. Give us the documentation to prove you're a current resident. That could happen. It's unlikely. But anyway, we basically have to confirm the person as a voter and make sure that their forms are filled out, right? In terms of their 2 pieces of paper they have to give us, their candidate statement can say anything. We don't edit it at all. The COI form must be completed and signed and dated. And that's the only glitch I've ever seen from a candidate, that somebody didn't complete their form or forgot to sign it. Anyway, by the 23rd, we have our list of candidates. And what we do after that is 2 things. On the 24th, we can actually post a notice on Constant Contact or whatever the new system is, if it's in place by then, to say, here are the candidates. Getting that information about who the candidates are up front early is great. And then we have 2 weeks to put together and mail the information packet, which includes the candidate statements. The information packet from last year is good. I looked it over. They did a nice job cleaning it up last year and doesn't need much in the way of changes. I'll run that document by you all, and then we just insert the candidate statements in that document and give it to Michael, and Michael has to get it mailed within 2 weeks. Again, sooner is better, and he knows that's coming.
The candidate statements they're due when they file on the 22nd?
Yeah. The candidates have to give us 2 things by 6 p.m. on the 22nd. A candidate statement of up to 1,000 words.
Right. Yeah, and the COI form.
And the COI form completed and signed. And we just need to check that they are indeed a voter and that their COI form is complete. We only check the statement to make sure that we got it, right? We don't edit it in any way. If somebody has typos all through it, that's too bad. That's on them, We don't fix it.
The length, you said the length is also something that needs...
1,000 words. This is basically 2 pages, 12 points.
Okay. All right.
And again, that information, will go out again in an announcement, which is why, it's really helpful if people actually email the election committee to say they're thinking about running, because then we can go over all this with them, rather than putting all this sort of mechanics details into, the newsletter. Anyway, so we have 2 jobs. One is to accept the candidate filings, and make sure that they're in order, and then put together the election info packet by inserting the candidate statements into the packet we've already approved. And I'll give you that document probably later this week with everything but the candidate statements. So that's a straightforward thing. It's a mailing job for Michael because that gets mailed out to all 330 BMA households, the election info packet. And there's a statutory time limit on that. Within 2 weeks of the filing date, we have to get that out in the mail.
What else is in that packet?
There's an intro cover note that's very friendly, with some general information about, the VMA election will be May 6th. We'll have you can vote by mail, And then there's election instructions, which is like a page and a half long. And then there's the candidate statements. So it's basically 3 components. It also includes the official announcement of the election, which is a legal document that goes in that info packet. It also includes the announcement of we have 2 official announcements in that packet. It's usually on the same page. One is the announcement of the election, which is a legal statement. And then the other is the legal announcement of the forum. And we don't know when the forum will be. We've scheduled it for April 23rd or 22nd, depending. But we can't schedule the forum until we check with the candidates. So the candidates file on the 22nd of March. We talk to them all, say, thank you for filing. Your filing is complete. We accept you, And by the way, which of these dates is best for you for the candidate forum? Because in that packet that goes out, the info packet, it's the official announcement for the forum as well as for the election itself.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And those are very short. I'll send you the document. We can just update last year's and stick the new candidate statements in, assuming we have new candidates.
All right.
Okay. The only other issue that I would raise here is if we don't have candidates, if we have empty slots, which is just really distressing to me personally, but could happen. And the outcome there is that what the election committee does is it notes in the cover letter that suppose we have one candidate for 2 slots, is that the second open slot will go to whoever gets the highest number of write-in votes. All right, that's how we handle that.
You said if we have,
We have 2 slots this
what
year.
what if you have no candidates?
If you have no candidates, we would say that the election will still be held, that the top 2 write-in candidates will get the 2 slots.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it
that's the
reverts
fallback.
to the write-in. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really, that's not great in terms of democracy in action because, somebody could get a write-in seat with, 15 votes.
Yeah, or less.
Yeah. We've had some years where the top number of write-ins was somebody got 5 or 6 votes. And if there had been an empty slot, if there hadn't been candidates running, they would have won the seat with 5 or 6 votes, which is not representative of the community. And that's why I find it problematic in terms of democracy, because write-in votes are important, but somebody getting a seat with only 5 or 6 write-in votes is not great. But if that's the situation, we would have to deal with it on the 22nd because we would have to put that information right up front in the cover letter on the info packet. Okay?
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just a question about that. You said that in some previous set of election regulations, there was a clause that provided for the backup plan in the event of insufficient response.
Yeah, the 2024 collection committee had a line of sentence in the regulations, which the council took out in January 2024, that said that the election committee is authorized to take steps as necessary in the event of unexpected circumstances to ensure a fair and complete election, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but it was a one sentence that said that. That language would have authorized the committee, if it were still in the regs, which it's not, to have, for example, extended a filing deadline, to put out an emergency announcement saying we have 0 candidates for 2 slots. We'll give you an extra week to get your forms in, right? We would have had the authority to do that because of that contingency line. But that contingency, that would be smart, right? That would be useful. But the council took that line out, and we didn't put it back in this year, just because probably we didn't want to argue about it. So there's nothing in there that currently, I still think it would be the smart thing to do. It would be the right thing, the democratic thing to do would be to extend the filing date. Other governments have done that. But we at the moment have no authority to do that as a committee. We should, but we don't.
Something to put on the list for
next year.
An amendment
for next year's regs. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. It's just a safety hatch. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
An orderly process and again, a fair and orderly way to have as a backup mechanism. I don't see any problem with that, but yeah, okay. Thank you.
These are all good questions. Okay. Arthur, do you want to weigh in on any of this? I mean, you don't need to, but you're welcome to.
No, I have nothing to say. I'm just taking it all in.
Okay. All right. So we've done number 2. We know how we're going to process the candidate filings, and we've got the schedule for the mailing of the election info packet. And again, I'll send last year's around for you to look at the, sort of generic language. And it should be all ready from our corner, ready to go as soon as we have the candidate statements to insert into it. We give it to Michael, and Michael gets it out as soon as possible. All right, number 3. We reviewed the contract with last year's contract with Electic, and we made some suggestions. And we reviewed the mail vote requirements for 2020. Michael has confirmed with me that we will indeed have the postal tracking, which we went to some trouble to do last year because the contractor hadn't done it the year before. And so all of that is in place. And the new contract I sent to both of you this evening or earlier today, right, in an email to you. Arthur, I don't know if I sent that to you. I don't know if you've seen the new contract. I sent it to the election committee.
I don't think I have that. No.
Yeah. Let me forward it to you right now. I'm just forwarding it.
I have a question about it.
You bet.
I mean, it's already been signed, so it's a moot point. But I recall that we were asking a question about the charges, to eliminate some ambiguity in the way that sentence was phrased about if you pay once or you pay twice. And I must say, it's still ambiguous to me.
Yeah.
It says in the third clause, the
Right.
charge shall remain this is in the event of a runoff election to be held on a separate date, the charge shall remain $9,510 to cover the costs of reprinting and rerunning everything for the runoff. So that is 9,510 times 2, right?
Correct. That there would be a separate. We had asked him to say, here's the language we gave Michael. In the event of a runoff election, the charge shall remain at dollars amount. The separate cost for the runoff election shall remain as stated in the second item or cost of estimate sheet, We'd said, Michael, clarify the sentence. It sounds like there could be no additional expense. That'd be nice if true, but the intention here is to place a separate second charge at the same price as the initial election. We said, please correct the clause after the semicolon. Quote, the separate cost for the runoff election shall remain as stated, And that's not how it got changed.
It sounds like it's the same price and the same for the same service and no more to me.
Right. Yeah, I don't think. I wasn't really happy with the way that got handled. I mean, it changed the language a little bit in it, but it didn't clarify it the way we had suggested it. So, it's a done deal.
Yeah, that's fine. It's ambiguous, though, isn't it?
It's still ambiguous. It was not clarified the way the committee had asked.
Yeah.
If you go to the next change we had, which was in the fifth paragraph, the fifth section,
was the responsibility of the electech for other things that might go wrong, wasn't it?
No, that's in the seventh paragraph. The fifth paragraph it said, and again, it was just really badly written. It said, as soon as they are known, Martin's edition shall provide information. It says, that did get corrected. The revised version that got signed says, as soon as the election information is known, we shall provide electech with the info. It should appear on the ballot. So that one they did fix that. And I was not involved in this, by the way. We gave the markup to Michael, and Michael collected. Yeah, just saying. I wasn't on that phone call. The seventh section is the one where we really had a substantive issue, where it said that if there was a malfunction with a machine, that Electech would have to provide, a corrected machine. And the problem we had with Electech is that not that there was a machine malfunction, but that in 2023, the Electech staff temporarily misplaced some ballots. And all of my contracts with the government for 30-some years have said that I am responsible for repairing and correcting anything that doesn't go right, even if it's human error. Yeah. And that they have to. It reads
now is that they're sort of free of all liability. They bear no liability for anything.
Well, I didn't read it that way, Elizabeth. I read it to say that they now do have to provide replacement equipment or other limited. Corrective actions, right?
Limited to providing replacement equipment or other corrective actions for any additional elections that may be required.
As a result of malfunction or error. So they did correct it to include human error. And the other corrective actions could include a whole new election.
Well, okay. I don't agree, Marty.
All right, tell me what you think, Larry.
First off, Elizabeth, before you got here, we were talking about this contract is titled supposedly as if it were generated by Electech,
which it was,
rather than us. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
And so then the question is who. So when there's ambiguity or any interpretation of a contract, the courts look at it that it's on the person preparing the document to make it clear what the intent is. Okay? And so this is, as far as I'm concerned, gibberish. So that may be a money issue, and the money issue is somewhat outside of our province of responsibility. That's more of a staff
contract administration, right,
type thing. But the real issue here is it's not clear what kind of performance to make things right is required and how quickly. You see, Electech could turn around and start squabbling over this with us, and we couldn't process or proceed with any further actions because of that problem. There's nothing here that says that the condition, regardless of this monetary dispute or other disputes, the parties agree that without delay or with all due speed, that the performance of the election process be completed. Nothing similar to that's in here.
Yep.
And
I agree.
That's the concern I think that the election committee would have about this contract.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the best thing we can do at this point is mark it down for next year to address it then, because this is now signed and we're kind of stuck with it this year. And this contract was so bad that I'm glad at least we fixed some of the problems this year. But it's not great. I look at the contract in terms of, does it protect Martin's Additions?
Yeah, it doesn't.
And it's not adequate yet. It's better than it was by a long shot, because until we put this change in the 7th paragraph, there was absolutely no liability whatsoever if their personnel screwed up, which did happen in 2023, although they were able to fix it fairly quickly, apparently.
And the other thing is, Marty, is it just addresses in the 7th clause there, machine error. It doesn't address human error.
It does. It does.
And
it does.
It's why are we quibbling over machine or person? It should be if the company, the vendor, has a malfunction or one of the other two things. Yeah. Okay, incomplete or erroneous performance. Okay, that they'll make it right. Why are we coming up with confusion by adding this other words, which actually makes it, as you said, a confusing mess?
Well, it does cover both, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I see now.
Error by service personnel.
Services personnel, yes.
Incomplete results. Presumably, my presumption is that since the contractor is required to comply with the VMA regs, and the VMA regs say that the election committee manages the elections, we would, as a committee, determine whether the results were incomplete. That is within our purview entirely. So we would say, okay, these are incomplete results, if we had some objective reason to say that. And then there would be liable to providing replacement equipment or other corrective actions, which I presume we would define for any additional elections that may be required as a result of malfunction or error. So, it gives us more coverage than we had. It's still not terribly clear.
What about the eighth clause?
All right, does it say anything about how quickly it should be done?
And Larry, I just noted that too. It should say within, all due speed.
Without delay, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the 8th clause, it says, Martin's Additions agrees to indemnify Electech and save it harmless from any and all legal action arising out of said election.
Yeah, I interpret that to mean that if a candidate sued Martin's Additions and or Electech for screwing up the election, that the Martin's Additions indemnifies them. That was not changed from the previous year. And that actually is a fairly standard clause in my contracts with various governments at various levels, that I am indemnified by the government agency if the government agency gets sued, unless there was some fault of mine, as in the 7th paragraph, in which case I'm required to do corrective action. So that's actually fairly standard language. Larry, what do you think?
Well, again, when I'm looking at it, hold harmless means it doesn't matter where a suit comes from. It could be us suing.
Right. Yes, this would prevent VMA from suing Electech for screwing things up.
That's right. Well, what it actually says is that when you hold harmless, you take the responsibility of making them good if they have to spend money on attorneys and stuff.
That's true. In fact,
it would pay their attorney's fee, it goes on to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Which but again, that's more of an administrative issue. That has nothing to do with our job is to ensure that if they screw up, they have to, in a timely manner, do everything to satisfy that screw up and get the election completed.
Correct.
All
That's
right.
correct. Okay.
Well, we
Yeah,
can
but this-
save those notes for next year too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I would be happy with a an eighth clause that had eclectic hold Martin's additions harmless for their screw ups.
You're
That
right.
worked both ways.
Yep.
Larry, what'd you say to that?
Absolutely. That's what I had Marge sign. Hold me harmless.
And did she actually
Got it.
sign that, Larry?
You have a prenuptial agreement,
Oh,
right?
sure she did.
So don't give Bill any ideas, Larry. All right, ninth clause is just about taxes. And the last place we had marked up was the in witness whereof section. If you look at our markup on that,
Right.
all right, the language they had was terrible in the 24 contract. It's got that archaic wording. Instead of saying it should be these presents is the archaic wording, not their presence. And the question we had was, officers. If only Matt Lilly signs, could a court find the contract invalid and unenforceable because there were no officers who signed it? No plural officers. And I noted that in our note to Michael, we said it's not VMA's job to clean up Electric's boilerplate contract language, but making sure the contract is clear and accurate protects VMA. And so they didn't really change it much. They, they didn't change it at all, actually, to be signed by its officers. So that one, our markup basically got ignored. And
yeah, but again, I'm sorry, but this is contract administration, not
us.
No, it's not. I mean, the simplest thing that I'd be checking with the state of where are they in? Pennsylvania or where? Where are they?
They're in New Jersey.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
And find out who Matthew Lilly is. Is he an officer, etc.?
He's the president. I do know him personally.
Well, great, but is he legally identified? His signature legal for the corporation because he's signing not for himself but for the corporation.
Correct, and it does say that. It says for Electec, Matthew Lilly.
Yeah, I know.
For
But
VMA.
it doesn't say who he is. Doesn't say if he's president.
Right. It should have.
Yeah, it does. It does up above. It says signed by its president or designee.
Well, or designate.
Right. So is Matthew?
So it's missing a title. You're saying under his signature.
Right.
Yeah, who is he?
Anyway.
Should have a title.
Okay, like you said, this is contract administration, but we can
Exactly.
certainly send those notes again for next year on it. What do you want in the minutes from this? Just that we reviewed this already
We
signed
reviewed the
contract?
changes, and made some notes for next year
Yeah.
on ways the contract should be clarified.
Okay.
Hold on a second. I need to deal with my dog here.
Well, Elizabeth,
Yes.
I think the note should reflect that we're concerned or want to clarify that the contract it more clearly addresses accomplishing the election, the timeliness of it, and the responsibilities of Electet to participate in that accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I see it from an election committee viewpoint is missing.
Okay. I've made a note.
Okay.
What's next?
I was trying to get Marty to talk a little more about, I don't know if you have any idea, but she's looking at actually those Excel files,
Mm-hmm.
and I just went through doing that for a 400 member association, professional association, and she's got double that, and it's a nightmare when you see a conflict and then you have to stop and research that conflict.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers of hours that is taking is huge.
Mhm.
So, and my point being is that so many of these mistakes are not an issue of people being nefarious, but when they happen by whoever, other parties, etc., that whole process adds so much extra work into what has
Yeah.
to be done. You know, it was interesting that when I looked up our concerns has been that primarily when mistakes are made, it's not, is there some evil empire making those mistakes, but
Uh-huh.
it just creates a huge confusion and burden. Okay, that's who needs it? So
Right.
anyway,
Yeah, I imagine that is a very big job to do if you're confronting 3 different registers in
Yeah.
Excel.
Forgive
this
the
whole
dog.
thing
I'm trying to deal with my dog here.
The-
Larry, I take your point and I appreciate your clarity about the amount of work that involves serving on the selection committee and doing these things correctly. And I'm trying to quiet my dog down. Thank you. And
Your
like
dog,
I said,
your dog is jealous.
yeah,
my dog is saying that this is a whole lot of work. And I am happy to do it. It actually, I know a lot of the people in the village. It's not that hard for me to do it, but for somebody new coming in who was not familiar with this, it would be incredibly time consuming. For me, it's somewhat time consuming.
yeah.
So
Okay.
moving
We're
on to
on
number
point
4. Yes, and hopefully wrapping up soon here. The timeline for the election notices and newsletter articles. We've got the newsletter article for March done and in, and it was done correctly. The links were activated. All looks good on that. We will be writing a newsletter article for May that focuses on 2 items, 2 issues. One is voting procedures and encouraging people to vote, of course. And the second piece in that would be the new voters, right? Because we want to, that comes out, in April. Actually, the April newsletter is the one I'm talking about that focuses on new voters and voting procedures and lets people know, again, the forum's coming up, da-da-da. So that will be coming. The other documents we need to do are, of course, our election committee report for the council meeting, which is going to be on March 20th. And I'll get that to you guys on the committee for you to approve and edit it. And then we have 2 standalone notices. Besides the Friday weekly wrap-ups, between now and March 22nd, we should do 2 standalone notices, I think 2, that remind people of basically what the flyer at the La Firme brunch said, which is now is the time to step up. March 22nd, that 6 p.m. deadline is firm. We can't extend that. There's nothing in the regs that would allow us any flexibility on that. And so I'm thinking 2 standalone notices kind of midweek. One would come out on perhaps the 12th or 13th of March for the 22nd is the deadline. And the second one should come out on the 18th or 19th of March for the 22nd deadline. What do you think? Should we do 2 or just 1?
What was the timing between them?
A week between them. So one might come out like Wednesday the 12th, and the next one might come out on Wednesday the 19th, and the deadline is 6 p.m. on the 22nd. And they would both be very short. They would be like the note that we did for the brunch, which says, step up now.
Yeah, wouldn't it be that if you get nothing after you've done? So I guess you'd have to make a decision on the 17th, 5 days after you put out the first one, to determine whether you're going to put out a second one.
That's right. That's right. And, it does take people a little bit of time to write their candidate statements. Most people put some care into that from what I've seen over the years. And so it doesn't really help to put a notice in on the Friday weekly wrap-up the day before the 22nd. We will put something in the Friday wrap-up on the 14th. We'll probably put something in the wrap-up on the 7th, a short piece. Question is the standalone thing.
On the 17th?
Okay, all right. We can put notices in the wrap-ups on the 7th and the 14th of March, right? We'll put a little something in there. That's just standard.
In the wrap-ups.
In the wrap-up. But a lot of people don't look at the wrap-ups. So my question to you guys is, do we do one separate standalone notice on the 12th that says it's 10 days to the filing deadline? If you're going to be a candidate, step up now. I mean, that for me is the critical one. Hopefully people will respond. If they don't respond to a standalone notice saying, be a candidate on the 12th, and they don't respond to the wrap-up note on the 14th, and it gets to be Monday the 17th, St. Patrick's Day, and we have no candidates for the 2 slots, do we put another note in on the 18th or 19th, a standalone notice that says, hey, now we're 5 days out for the deadline and we still have no candidates, step up, right? Be a good citizen, or whatever we want to say. And I would look to you guys.
We can't answer that question now, but let's leave it as 1 or 2, depending on what the response is.
Makes good sense to me. Larry,
Yeah.
are you okay with that?
I agree.
Okay.
So we basically have a standalone note on the 12th, 10 days out. We have notes in the weekly wrap-ups on the 7th and 14th. And then we see, what kind of response we have on St. Patrick's Day, and decide where we go from there, whether we need to do another standalone notice. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So that's the schedule for the newsletter articles coming up. And last but not least, any other election issues?
What is there? Do you have any idea what normally comes up under other election issues?
Well, last year there was a weird little kerfuffle from Tiffany Cisna, who wanted to make sure that she was included as a resident, even though she was living in Mexico City. And of course, she didn't fill out the form where you could check the box. But she did finally send us a couple of emails, which between them, the committee adjudicated as being sufficient to confirm. So we basically sent her and her husband, Francis.
Yeah, but that's nothing. I mean, we don't have anything like that now. Nothing.
No, nothing's pending right now. I know of no other issues that are pending right now. Doesn't mean something's going to happen, but so far so good. And
let me just ask you a question here. I'm a little confused. Suppose that comes up, a thing like that. Is there any right to privacy issues about that being discussed in an open meeting?
No, because the election procedures are open by definition. And it actually says in the regulations that residents are entitled to election information, and that all election procedures are public documents. And, if somebody files as a candidate, I mean, candidate filings are always public. That's not a privacy issue.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah.
And voter rolls are actually public documents. It actually says that in the regs. I'm really glad that we had that in last year and kept it in this year. It says that the election roll is a public document and is available to any registered voter on request.
But for example, suppose the person is in a sensitive job and they're providing information. I don't know that should be made. Isn't that more of an administrative task or something?
Well, no, because we are responsible for mailing their ballot to their current address that they give us.
Yeah, but I mean, couldn't we say that your documentation isn't, sufficient, or it wasn't, but I don't think we should be showing or discussing the details of that documentation.
We don't. We just list the document they gave us, whether it was a driver's license or a student ID or a bank statement.
Okay.
Right? That's all we say. We don't say it was, Bank of America account number XYZ. We don't do that at all. We just say that they gave us some documentation. It was of the form X and we accepted it.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they're good questions though. Good question. Any other questions? We're kind of deep down in the mechanics of this now.
No, I mean.
Okay. And again, if you guys have any questions at any time, obviously just call me. So I'd be really happy to walk through this. And I think this has been a really productive meeting.
Oh, I actually come to think of it. There is one, which is the questions. What's the process for coming up with the questions for the candidate forum?
Okay, that also gets announced in the April newsletter. And the regs are good this year. They were good last year too on this thing, that we accept questions pretty much however residents want to send them to us. They can send them to the committee email, which is the standard practice. They could also put a question in an envelope and leave it at the village office marked election committee. They can call an election committee member and say, I want you to ask this or that question. That the regs are good. They don't unduly restrict voters' ability to ask questions. We just write them all down and compile them. And in April, again, it'd probably be April 21st, 22nd, 23rd is when the form will be, depending on when the candidates are available. And probably, Elizabeth, you and Naomi would be the ones to do the moderating. Naomi.
Why would you say that?
Because I think it's better that I don't do it. And Larry, I think you would be charming as a moderator. You're certainly welcome to moderate the forum if you like.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful not to be sarcastic when you ask a question, because we are just delivering questions from the residents. We are not argumentative with the candidates. And Elizabeth, you have such a good demeanor. Larry, not to say that you don't, but think about it.
Maybe we can draw straws a little bit later on that. But I was just curious to know how. Our committee would get together and actually sit down and write up the questions based on feedback that had been come in from the community and anything else we thought that,
the committee can do that. I suspect that George McAleese's committee did that because I didn't recognize the questions that residents sent in. When he asked questions, it sounded like they were committee questions. And
last year there were quite a few questions.
There were quite a few. Yeah. Residents respond generally when we send out the invitation, send your questions for the forum. Right. I like as a matter of just principle, not that it's legally required, for the committee to take a step back and just be the secretary, the scribe, and for residents' questions to be asked pretty much verbatim. And so,
you just eliminate the redundancy though, because so you don't end up asking the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And what Naomi and Jen Bergeron, who moderated the forum last year, did with I don't remember, it's like 20 some questions we had, is they grouped them into categories. One was a category of about people's experience. What background do you bring as a candidate? What are your strengths? And then there was questions about specific issues. Those came straight from the residents. Last year's committee did not originate any questions. We simply compiled what came in. We kept it verbatim. And then Jen and Naomi grouped them and asked them accordingly and moderated it. And we need a timekeeper and we need a moderator. And the two roles are interchangeable. I think that Jen and Naomi kind of switched back and forth during the forum. And the list of questions, we've always had it when I've done this. I don't know what happened under George or under Tiffany when they were chairing the committee, but every year that I've been on the committee, we've had plenty of questions come in from residents. And there was an issue some years back about residents only being allowed to submit questions on the committee email. And a lot of residents didn't like that because they wanted to be able to submit questions, informally or anonymously.
On the day of.
Yeah, on the day of.
Yeah. Or anonymously, yeah.
Or anonymously in advance. And all on the committees that I've served on all these years since 2015, we've always accepted every question, put them on the list, and then the moderators pick and choose which questions they want to ask.
Right.
Yeah, but they're so anonymous or signed, but when you ask the question, you don't attribute it to who's asking the question.
Correct.
Right?
We don't use the resident's name.
Right. Okay.
So,
all right. So that's something we'll discuss in more detail at the April meeting, I guess, right?
That's right. We'll go over that at the April meeting. It's on the agenda for April.
Frankly, I thought that Naomi's demeanor was spot on. It was encouraging. Well, that's the best description of it. The way she did it, I just felt like, if I were anxious about it, never did anything in this type of thing, and I was kind of nervous about it, that her way she handled everything was just so, you can do this. This is fine. Type of thing. So
it was friendly, it was professional, it was clear. I thought that she and Jen both did a superb job last year.
Yep.
I'm glad you think so too, because
Yeah,
I
but Jen's,
complimented them
Jen's
both.
not here this year, but I'm trying to get Naomi in there.
I'll tell Naomi she has to listen to this particular part of the recording specifically, because I certainly thought she did a superb job last year as one of the moderators. And, I was very, very happy with the way the tone, like you said, was friendly,
Yeah.
reassuring, and that gets better answers from candidates because people
Yeah.
aren't just choked up with anxiety.
Right.
Again, some candidates, Arthur, you've always said that you really enjoy the forum. So you still feel that way? Unmute yourself, Arthur. Arthur, you there?
Well,
He's just away for a minute.
Okay. But, he has said repeatedly that he finds the
Yeah.
forums fun. And Jeff
Okay.
Blander also has said the same thing, that
Right.
it's that they, and, one of the things.
Okay, I'm here. I was here. I was clicking, and I don't know why. Anyway,
Okay, well, here
yeah.
you are.
In fact, back in the old days when we had it up in the office on Saturday with bagels and cream cheese and buns and things was,
That was fun.
yeah.
And you've always been very forthcoming. I think that the forums are sort of a natural for you, and they aren't for everybody. But
That's right. Some people are get tense but speaking in public I've enjoyed since third grade. So
not a problem, Arthur. Not a problem. Well, thank you, Arthur. Do you have any other election issues before we wrap up?
no, I don't have nothing. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So
And
I make a motion, we adjourn.
all in favor, please say aye. Is there a
Wait.
second? I'll second.
before you do that, are there any committee assignments that was on your agenda there?
Yeah, to review the
Schedule for the upcoming meeting?
scheduled for. Oh yeah, we need to do a schedule for the upcoming meeting.
Yeah.
You're right. And that should be. I'm looking at now. April. Monday, April 7th is the first Monday. We've generally been meeting on the first Monday, but Monday, April 7th, it's also the statutory due date for us to get the voter roll, verified voter roll, to Eclectic, the contractor.
Yeah. So we don't
I
want to.
think-
No, we don't want to get involved. Yeah.
So we need to meet before then.
Right.
And I'm looking at Thursday, the 3rd of
7, 6,
April,
5.
because Friday, the 4th, Naomi usually has a Sabbath dinner on a Friday. So the Thursday, the 3rd of April would work for me. Is that good for you guys?
I think it's fine with me.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. All right. And again, 7:30 p.m.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Okay.
Okay, what was that date? What was that date again?
Thursday, April 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
And one of the agenda items there will be the committee vote to verify, approve the verified voter roll so we can send it in on the 7th.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll also go over the stuff for the forum at that meeting and anything else that we need to do.
So
And
Marty, you don't want to have it on April Fools, huh?
I'm tempted, Larry. I am so tempted. But probably best not. Okay. The assignments for the notes, Elizabeth, are that the committee will review will produce the list of people to mail the notification letter to this week, so that Michael can get it out on Friday to the 62 people.
Mhm.
And the committee will also review the draft of the election info packet for this year, because we should have that all ready to go and just insert the candidate statements on the 22nd or 23rd. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And the third thing is that the committee will hold an informal, or you don't even need to put this in actually, because we will confer on the 22nd Saturday night or early Sunday morning to make sure that the nominees submitted the correct paperwork, that we don't need to get back to anybody to correct anything. So we have an admin session on the 23rd, morning of the 23rd, or if we're not out partying on Saturday night, we could do it Saturday night.
Okay.
All right. And that we will produce. You say again? All set?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to
Second.
adjourn. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Did I for
Aye.
me?
Thank you again, Arthur.
Okay,
And Arthur, how do we get the AI document? How does that come to us?
I'm not sure. Michael has done it, and it's on, so he has to download it somehow.
Okay, I'll follow up with him tomorrow. And again, thank you
Okay.
for recording and for Zooming us and for doing the AI, having that switched
Okay,
on.
and I am stopping the recording.
At 9:10 p.m. we are adjourned. Thank you.